I mean, that's not even insane. You want to compare Eastern Europe and something, compare it with something that was comparable before this took place. So say compare Russia and Brazil, or compare Bulgaria and Guatemala, or something like that. That's a sane comparison. And there's a good reason why nobody undertakes it. If you have a look at Brazil and Guatemala and the rest of them, you'll see why nobody undertakes that comparison. Except people in the third world who don't have good educations like us, they do make that comparison. And Planner in the United States always made that comparison in the West, and they were afraid of what they found, that in comparison with what we're doing, this stuff looks pretty successful, and others are going to try to follow it. And that Henry Kissinger had a word for it. It's a virus that'll infect others. And he was talking about Chile under Allende. It was going to be a virus that would infect people as far as Italy, not because Chile was going to conquer Italy, but because it would send the wrong message to Italian voters, namely you can vote for a social democratic system and maybe it'll work. And when there's a virus, you got to destroy it and inoculate everything around it. And that's what we did. You look over that, that's basically the Cold War. Okay, it's over. So Eastern Europe goes back to what it was, pretty much, 100%. But the parts that were part of the West are becoming part of the West. The parts that were third world are becoming third world. And that does contribute to these other phenomena. It means, in fact, you read the business press, they're very frank about it. The business press, which is the best place to, if you want to read the press, that's the one that usually comes close to telling you the truth. They tell you that with Eastern Europe now back in its third world situation, or to put it, let me quote from the Financial Times in London, the world's greatest business newspaper, as with the impoverishment and pauperization of East Europe as a result of the capitalist reforms, the Western investors can now move their production over to Eastern Europe and undermine the pampered Western workers who will be forced to give up their luxurious lifestyle. So now, in other words, not only can GM and VW and so on invest in Mexico and Brazil and so on, but they can also do it in Poland, where they furthermore get well-educated, healthy, trained people, because this part of the third world did develop. And they can do it at 10% the cost of the pampered Western European workers without any benefits. And incidentally, since none of these guys believe in the free market and never have, free markets for others, not for yourself, they insist on high tariff protection and subsidies from the government and the usual stuff that comes along with foreign investment. So in that respect, yes, it's another weapon in the hands of Western power to undermine the pampered Western workers. So yes, the Cold War has an effect. But it's not a big effect. And as with regard to aid, it's virtually nothing. What am I going to talk about tomorrow? Well, what I'm going to talk about tomorrow is the rollback on the domestic scene. I think it's going on.
Oh, just water?
The United States is in fact being subjected to a kind of a structural investment program. It's being turned into a third world society. Now it's so rich, it has so many advantages. In fact, it's totally unparalleled. This ought to be by far the most richest. If there's one hungry child in the United States, the socioeconomic system is a total catastrophe. Consider given the wealth of this country. It's not like other places. You want to know how wealthy it is? I'll give you just one figure. In the 18th century, the life expectancy of Americans, that level of life expectancy was not reached by the upper classes in Britain until this century. The next richest people in the world. That's one measure of the extraordinary privilege and advantages that there are here. And in fact, so we're being turned into a kind of third world society, but it's the United States, it's not Haiti. And that's happening all over. You can't walk through any American city without recognizing a third world city, sector of great opulence, a large group of people, actually the majority, who are suffering or maybe in misery, and a big mass of superfluous people you have to get rid of. All Souls Church, wherever it is. Anyway, that's what we're doing.
Professor Chomsky, it's an honor to share again this time and space with you. As your greatest student, I had to inquire the technique of our intellectual endeavor. we ought to review the responsibility of intellect, that is the uncorruptible one. Why have we failed to persuade the majority at center to take the necessary action, disengaging themselves from this benevolent, not benevolent, but benign and normalization of evil, also as known as cultural relativism that has historically haunted our condition. And here's a case in point. Richard Wolling's reply to your letter, Richard Wolling, W-O-L-I-N. You wrote a letter.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And he says, despite the considered political and culture means at the disposal of opinion makers and politicians, most citizens remain contra Chomsky, surprisingly capable of penetrating the veil of deceit and making up their own minds. Then so what if all citizens are aware it has a repression from the systematic mechanism of economic political control enslave us to the rich and the powerful?
So the question is why, why we're, if I got it correctly, why we're unable to convince the majority of people to look at things the way we think the world is, and are the mechanisms of control so powerful that it can't be broken?
I believe our technique ought to be looked at too and see.
Yeah. See, I don't agree with the assumption. I think most of the population's on our side. In fact, I think the evidence is overwhelming about that. So take, for example, like I mentioned one case. I only mentioned one case, in fact, when I was talking about public opinion and policy. I mentioned several cases. Just take the case I mentioned. One of them is the Vietnam War. That's a big issue. There has been, by now, 40, 50 years of intense propaganda about the Vietnam War, all of which says it was a noble effort that maybe went wrong. 70% of the population says it was fundamentally wrong and immoral, not a mistake. Despite that massive propaganda, despite never having heard anyone say that, meaning everyone picked it up on their own somehow. Take, say, the Pentagon budget. The one part of the budget's going up. Well, the population, I'm against that, and so are the population by 6 to 1. It's not a small amount. Take, say, budget balancing. Big thing, We're all supposed to assume and take for granted that you got to balance the budget. In fact, the political system is bounded. There are differences. Some guys say 7 years, some guys say 8 years. So that's and then you debate that in the political system, and you listen to NPR, and they tell you Americans voted for a balanced budget, and so on. Well, the fact that here are the polls you got to look at a little bit carefully because they're well crafted. There's one question asked for headline writers. And there's another question asked for people who want to know what public opinion is like, so you know how to frame the messages in which you deceive people. And those are different questions. The question for the headline writers is, would you like a balanced budget? And most everybody says, sure. That's like asking people, would you like your mortgage to disappear? Terrific. I like my mortgage to disappear. So you get a big high number. Okay, that's for NPR and the editorial writers and so on. Everybody wants a balanced budget. Then comes the other question, which is for the propagandists who have to figure out how to frame this so people don't know what's hitting them. And that says, that begins to ask the rational questions. Like, would you want your household debts eliminated if it means giving up your house or your car or your children's education and so on? Well, then everybody says, no, I don't want a balanced household budget anymore. So when you ask that question, the same question, do you want the budget balanced if it means cuts in health expenditures or social spending or environment and so on? Well, then population's opposed by 3 to 1 or something, depending on exactly how the question is framed. So in fact, the population is overwhelmingly opposed to a balanced budget. Now, you're not allowed to know that. You're supposed to think everybody wants a balanced budget. Clinton, when he responds to the Republicans, says, of course, we have to balance the budget. Okay, well, they're the population again. And in fact, you could ask the question, who's right? I mean, there is a factual question. Is the population right, or is the whole political elite right? Well, I think there's good evidence about that, and I think the population is right, but that's another question. In fact, let me just end with this. not only do I think the population's on our side, so does the right-wing Congress. So does the Wall Street Journal. They all think the population's on our side. And there's proof of it. Actually, my latest had an article in Covered Action Quarterly where I ended up giving some evidence about this. The evidence that I cited was there's a program in Congress called Defunding the Left. Okay, and the Wall Street Journal has big articles about it, how we got to defund the left, and Congress is pushing through, legislation which will defund the left. Well, take a look at who they've got to defund. And what they're worried, they say, is it's really terrible. The government's funding all these left-wing organizations. We got to stop that. All right, take a look at the list. The top organization of the left that has to be defunded is Catholic Charities. The reason why is because there are priests and nuns who, for nothing, are going out and working with poor people to try to help them deal with the fact that they don't have any heating for their homes and to help in Head Start programs. So we got to defund the left and stop giving money to Catholic Charities. The second biggest program is AARP, American Association of Retired People. Another big left-wing organization. Why do they have to be defunded? Well, they have to be defunded, it's explained, because they happen to have a program that's trying to help elderly people who are hungry get work. Now, in fact, the Wall Street Journal had another article saying that 16% of the elderly are severely malnutritioned and many are literally starving. But AARP is trying to work out some kind of program for them to get some work. So that's another left-wing organization that has to be defunded. And so it goes on. In fact, if you have a look at it, it turns out that the left is everybody who is not pathologically insane. That's a pretty large number of people. So in fact, they think the whole left is that we won. That we've got everybody on our side. And in fact, I don't think that's completely wrong. It's not that the propaganda system has, turned everybody into a raving lunatic. No, it hasn't. People keep their decent instincts, but they are very confused. I mean, the same people who say the government should increase, the majority of the population says the government has a responsibility to help the poor, but another majority of the population says the government should end welfare. Well, what's welfare? Well, helping the poor. And here's where the propaganda system has worked. I mean, it's convinced people that we're giving away all our money, we're giving all our money to foreigners, we're giving our money to black women driving Cadillacs, and all that kind of stuff. And that kind of confusion is all over the place. And people don't know what they want, and they don't know what they think, but they know what their attitudes are. And their attitudes are pretty sane.
Professor, but you must admit that the situation have not changed. And matter of fact, I think
the situation has not changed.
Have not changed.
Since when? I mean, do we have slavery?
In the form.
Okay, so the situation's changed a lot. In fact, situations changed a lot in our lifetimes for the better. It's a much better country than it was 30 years ago, way better. And that's a very important, a meeting like this could not have been held. Inconceivable that it could have been held 30 years ago. And now it can be held everywhere in the country, the most reactionary place in the country with huge mobs and everybody's interested and so on and so forth. Those are big changes. And they reflect all sorts of things that have happened in the country, not because, people were writing articles or reading books or anything like that, because plenty of people are organizing. And they're organizing because they know things, and they're learning things, and they're contributing by their actions to other people learning things and so on. That has changed the country. And there's plenty of room for further change. Things go up and back. Like now it's worse than it was a couple of years ago, but that's happened before too. 1920s were worse than now. Okay,
When do you see
keep
question?
struggling.
It's my unhappy duty to
One-
inform you that our
One-
contract calls for us to close down 10 minutes ago. So I'm really sorry. I thank you all very, very much for coming. Thank you, Professor Thompson. There are books and magazines in the lobby. You might want to stop on your way out, and please remember to subscribe to CAQ and support alternative journalism that can bring you these kinds of events. Thank you.
To order a video copy of this program for $29.95 plus shipping and handling, please call 1-800-C-SPAN 98. This week on America and the Courts, a profile of Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, former appeals court judge Leon Higginbotham, and attorney Stephen Smith, a former clerk for Justice Thomas, offer their views. America and the Courts, tomorrow at a special time, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 Pacific.
Welcome, everyone. My name is John Paul Jones. I'm the Dean of the College of Social and Behavioral Sciences. It's a pleasure to welcome everyone here tonight in a collaboration between the college, Tucson Festival of Books, and The Nation magazine, A Conversation with Chomsky. The interlocutor for tonight's event is John Nichols. He is the Washington correspondent for The Nation. He writes The Beat. He's also a contributing writer to The Progressive and In These Times. And from his home base in Madison, Wisconsin, he is the associate editor of Capital Times. He has been written in the New York Times, the Chicago Tribune. He appears regularly on radio and television. He's been in many documentaries, including The Hot Wire with Barbara Koppel, which will be filmed tonight at the Loft Theater. And Barbara Koppel, Oscar-winning director, and John Nichols from The Nation will be discussing that documentary. John Nichols has written extensively on media, politics, and money, sometimes separately, but usually those go together, including his most recent book, Dollarocracy: How Money and the Media Electoral Complex Are Destroying America. And please join me in welcoming John Nichols. And now it's a pleasure to welcome back to Tucson, Professor Noam Chomsky. Professor Chomsky, Professor Emeritus at MIT, the founding father of linguistics, and a person that if you are in any way involved in the behavioral sciences, you know who he is. He has influenced mathematics, computer science, the other languages, psychology, cognitive science, the author of over 100 books, countless articles, and America's foremost public intellectual, a man who spreads political dissent left and right, a self-described libertarian socialist and anarchist, a critic of US foreign policy, and someone who stands for justice, Professor Noam Chomsky.
Wow. You have a slight advantage in that, well, maybe a disadvantage. You can see us. We can't see you as quite as well. But I can tell that you're all beautiful. And I also sense your enthusiasm about the evening we're going to have, or the afternoon. When The Nation magazine was thinking about the events that we were going to do to mark our 150th anniversary, we knew we wanted to do something with somebody who'd been around for at least half the magazine's life. And we also knew, so we were hoping it would have been right for that whole period of time. And so we were stuck with Noam Chomsky. And we also knew we didn't want to do the event in New York or Washington, because the genius of Noam Chomsky is that for decades, he has traveled to every corner of the United States and to every corner of the world to be where activists and people are standing up for economic and social justice and peace. And so we decided that if there was any place that needed some Chomsky, it was probably Arizona. So here we are. Thank you to the dean and to the school and to the university. Thank you to the Tucson Festival of Books. And thank you to Noam Chomsky, who was in South America until yesterday, just flew in from Buenos Aires. And it's a remarkable credit to this man that when he could maybe relax a little, he seems to be running faster and harder than ever. And I noticed when you walked out, Noam, I flashed on something that I think many people in the room will know about, but not everybody. Almost 50 years ago, you debated William F. Buckley on public television, on national TV, nationwide, about issues of war and peace and, the state, propaganda, so many issues. And just like this, sitting like this, debating on national television. And it struck me, I haven't seen you a lot on national television since. But it's perhaps a good way to begin, because the fact of the matter is, you are, and I don't think it's news, you are America's, the world's, I would argue, leading public intellectual, and yet you are rarely seen on television, our main vehicle of communications in the United States. Why is that?
Actually, every once in a while I'm on Fox News.
I know, yeah.
But one of my great honors that I'm most proud of is that National Public Radio has a prime time program, All Things Considered, their big program in the afternoon. The co-host actually is a record of saying I'm one of the people he will never permit on that program.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, no small accomplishment.
Yeah.
But I'll still go deeper, because the fact of the matter is, as somebody who's been involved for a long time in media reform efforts and efforts to kind of tackle the many challenges of American media, we have an incredibly narrow discourse in our major media in this country. And it is a discourse that does, in fact, move all sorts of folks out to the margins, and does not cover movements.
Does it?
Doesn't cover movements, doesn't cover what's really happening a lot on the ground. And I think in many senses that disempowers folks, because they're never told about what all is happening or the ideas that are in play.
There's actually the most interesting media, in my opinion, are what are called the liberal media. They, in fact, most of my own writing and discussion analysis is about them. They kind of set the limits. They say you can go this far and not a millimeter farther. And that's true pretty much around the world. And of course, it does cut out popular movements, popular activism. Very occasionally, something will break through. If Zuccotti Park finally broke through slightly with actually better coverage than I expected for a while. But generally, the idea that people might get together, organize, act to change the world, that's frightening. That's like some small country deciding to go off on an independent course. That's quite dangerous.
And when that does happen, how does media, you mentioned coverage of Occupy, And in fact, we had a brief period, I think in 2011, where there were great popular uprisings in a lot of capitals around the United States, labor movement seeming to be out there. And how does so much of our media, and our liberal media, shut that down? What's the strategy? What's the tactic that you see?
I think, actually, I think it was pretty well described by George Orwell. He didn't say much about it, but everyone here, I'm sure, has read Animal Farm, but probably very few people have read the introduction to Animal Farm. The reason is it wasn't published. It was discovered about 30 years later in his unpublished papers. And today, if you get a new edition of Animal Farm, you might find it there. The introduction is kind of interesting. He basically says what you all know, that the book is a critical, satiric analysis of the totalitarian enemy. But then he says, he addresses himself to the people of free England. He says, you shouldn't feel too self-righteous. He said, in England, a free country, I'm virtually quoting, unpopular ideas can be suppressed without the use of force. And he goes on to give some examples and really just a couple of sentences of explanation, which are to the point. One reason, he says, is the press is owned by wealthy men who have every reason not to want certain ideas to be expressed. And the other, he says, is essentially it's a good education. If you have a good education, you've gone to the best schools, you have internalized the understanding that there are certain things it just wouldn't do to say. And I think we can add to that, it wouldn't do to think. And that's a powerful mechanism. So there are things you just don't think and you don't say. That's the result of effective education, effective indoctrination. That many people don't succumb to it. What happens to them? Well, I'll tell you a story. I was in Sweden a couple of years ago, and I noticed that taxi drivers were being very friendly, much more than I expected. And finally, I asked one of them, why is everyone being so nice? He pulled out a T-shirt. He said every taxi driver has, and the T-shirt had a picture of me and a quote in Swedish of something I had said once when I was asked, what happens to people of independent mind? And I said, they become taxi drivers.
Man, that is good. See, now if you could get a quote like that for every industry,
Yeah.
you'd rule the world.
Yeah.
Well, this gets to a deeper question, because it's clear in the United States today, and you see it, you travel an incredible amount around this country, and you see the movements that are there. Immigrant rights, Black Lives Matter, get rid of Citizens United, get money out of politics, labor struggles, all sorts of things that are there. So many movements, and yet not enough coalescence, not something coming together there. And I wonder if the lack of that cohesive center, that's a place where people can get their information in some sort of steady way, if that has a role in creating a situation where we're compartmentalized, we're, I think, often neglected and disrespected, and it has an actual political impact.
Yeah, it's even worse than that. I've lived in Boston since 1950, but I go to sections of Boston for talks and discover that there's very significant activism going on in that neighborhood that people don't know of in the next neighborhood where they're doing similar things. And part of the reason is simply the absence of a labor movement. Throughout history, the labor movement has been, with all of its defects and deficiencies and limits, it's been a kind of a center around which things coalesce. In other countries, when I give talks, even countries like England, the talks are often in labor movement centers, union centers, not in the United States. Very rare. You can talk to labor activists, but somewhere else, in a church or in a university, the few institutions that exist. But there has been a great success in the United States is to an unusual extent a business-run society. That goes way back to the early days for all kind of reasons. And it has a very violent and repressive labor history. Workers were being murdered in the United States by the hundreds at a time when nothing like that was taking place in Europe or Australia or other places. And repeatedly, the labor movement has simply been crushed. It's revived again, and when it did revive, it was a center around which activism coalesced. It had its own journals. As late as in the late 19th century, the labor press was very lively, active, widely read. As late as the 1950s, there were still about maybe 800 labor journals that were reaching maybe 30 million people a week. All of that has succumbed to the massive attack of concentrated capital. You're seeing it right now pretty dramatically right where you live.
In Wisconsin.
And
Scott Walker, our great
and the
contribution to the American political process.
and the success of even the rhetoric is pretty remarkable. Like take the so-called right to work law that just passed.
You are in a right to work state.
Yeah, right to work means right to scrounge. Has nothing to do with right to work. It means the right to be represented by a union to defend you and not to pay for it. That's right to work. So it's a right to scrounge law, but it's not described that way, and it's not interpreted that way. This is one part of a huge. In the 1920s, the labor had been virtually crushed. One of the great works of labor history is called, I think, something like The Fall of the House of Labor, referring to the 1920s, David Montgomery. And visitors from Europe and Australia were shocked to see the weakness and of the labor movement and its the ability to denounce, condemn, and destroy it. Well, in the 1930s, it arose again. CIO organizing, a lot of labor activism during the Second World War, the Depression and the Second World War. There was a real wave of radical democracy that spread all over much of the world, including the United States. And it led to a very quick backlash in many ways. So, for example, in Europe, as US and British troops finally began to enter the European continent late in the war, moving up through Italy, the first thing they had to do was to disperse the anti-fascist resistance, to restore the traditional order, including fascist collaborators. As they reached northern Italy, they were appalled to discover that the resistance, the partisan resistance, and they had developed a functioning society with worker management, worker ownership. This incidentally was the time of the British Labour Party, and they were appalled to discover that there were enterprises without managers and owners. All of that had to be dismantled. Same in Greece, same thing, and it was a very brutal war, killed hundreds of thousands of people, and so on all through Europe. But the same happened here. Not with that much violence, but immediately after the war, 1947 came the Taft-Hartley Act, undermining basic labor rights, organizing rights, secondary boycotts, and so on. Shortly after, a huge campaign began of corporate propaganda, which is pretty remarkable in scale. There's pretty good scholarship on it, like Elizabeth von Wolf's book. The concentrated capital was penetrating churches, schools, clubs, of course,
Education.
education was, and began a massive attack on labor. Well, I mean, the labor unions are not faultless in this. There was the radical militant element of the labor movement was eliminated. That was within the context of Cold War propaganda,
The
communist
left CIO union.
and so on. Yeah, so they were crushed, and the labor leadership accepted that. And furthermore, they entered into a kind of class collaboration. It's kind of interesting to compare the same union in the United States and Canada, like say UAW in the United States and Canada, same union, acted quite differently. One reason why Canada has national health care and the United States doesn't is that in Canada, the labor movements militantly advocated for national health care. In the United States, the same unions militantly advocated for good health care for themselves. So the auto workers did have decent health care with a compact with management. Now, a compact with management is a devil's choice because management can decide at any time it's over. And as you recall, it was pretty striking, and must have been 1979 or so. The Doug Fraser, head of UAW, pulled out of a labor management cooperative enterprise, saying that he's discovered that capital is fighting a one-sided class war against the labor movement. Big discovery.
It took a while.
Yeah, it took a while, but by that time it was pretty late.
But that war has really stepped up in the last few years, especially in the last few years, where we've seen, right to work at one time, was Arizona got to be right to work, and a lot of southern states, but it didn't move north. Now we have Michigan becoming a right to work state, Indiana, great steel center, becoming a right to work state, Wisconsin, the center of American progressivism, becoming a right to work state, public sector unions being busted down, losing collective bargaining rights. I mean, this is a very aggressive, concentrated initiative that's happening right now.
And
Why?
it goes back to the 1940s.
Now, go, it's history, but why now? So why does it all come now?
Well, if you look at the last, period since Second World War, the counterattack against labor, popular democracy, began immediately. It was held back for 20 years by a number of factors. One was the strong appeal of the New Deal measures, which a large part of the population strongly supported. You may recall that Eisenhower said that anyone who questions the legitimacy of New Deal programs is crazy.
It's a nut.
Is a nut. I mean, Eisenhower today would be way out on the left of the political spectrum.
Yeah.
But
Well, your buddy Howard Zinn would occasionally say that, in many ways, Eisenhower was a pretty impressive president because he didn't send troops to the Middle East, but he did send them to Arkansas.
that's right. Actually, he did send them to the Middle East.
I realize.
In
We're going to get to the rest of the world in a minute. Yeah.
But through the 50s and the 60s, there was the remaining powerful appeal of the New Deal measures. There still was a labor movement. Also, these were a period of very high growth, mostly based on the state sector of the economy, which you're not supposed to know. But it was high growth. This is sometimes called the golden age of American capitalism, and it was egalitarian growth. So the lowest quintile did about as well as the highest quintile. Furthermore, capital was regulated, very crucial.
And taxed.
The
wealthy were taxed.
wealthy were taxed, but capital was regulated. Banks were banks. Banks were places where you could, put your money in, they'd lend them to somebody to buy a car or something. Not like today. This system broke down in the early 70s. And that had a major effect. In fact, there were no financial crises in the 50s and the 60s because the regulatory system was intact. internationally, the Bretton Woods system of regulated capital was intact. That was dismantled in the early 70s. You begin to get what has become the global neoliberal assault on the global population everywhere, taking one or another form. In the United States, it's the form that it's taken is an increasing attack on the general population, including the labor movement. So, for example, for most of the population in the past, since, say, mid-70s, escalating under Reagan, continue under Clinton and on, for most of the population, real wages have stagnated or declined. For male workers today, real wages are about what they were in 1968. There's been growth, but it's going to very few pockets, narrower and narrower. And this has had a striking and dramatic effect, even on things like popular opinion. So take the last couple of years, Obama's kind of major initiative was the Affordable Care Act. And it's interesting to look at public attitudes towards it and to look back at the past. This is a very heavily polled country. We know a lot about people's attitudes. Ever since the 1940s, there's been strong support for national health care. Polls depend a little bit on how the questions asked, but it's often a large majority, very substantial. As late as the late 1980s, about a majority of the population thought that there ought to be a constitutional guarantee for health care. And actually about 40% of the population thought it was in the Constitution. That's not that long ago. Well, when take Obama, when Obama's initiative began, for almost 2/3 of the population supported a public option, meaning of the various options you could choose, one would be essentially Medicare, public national health care. That wasn't even mentioned. It wasn't even proposed.
They jettisoned it right away, along with single payer, which is what we should have done. Yeah.
The other, one of the strange, maybe unique features of the U.S. healthcare system is that the government is not permitted by law to negotiate drug prices. The VA is, so drug prices are lower there. The Pentagon can negotiate prices for paper clips, let's say, but the government cannot negotiate, say, for Medicare and Medicaid drug prices. So of course they're out of sight. Obama never even tried to touch this, even though 85% of the population are opposed to it. Now, and if you look at the following years, the propaganda has so changed people's expressed attitudes, whatever their actual attitudes are, that even the mild reforms of the Affordable Care Act, which are some kind of a step forward, they don't really deal with the problem, even those are opposed. And think that in not that many years ago, like 1990, 4% of the population thought there was a constitutional guarantee for public health care. This is a tremendous triumph of propaganda.
And we've created a system now where it is so easy to flood so much money into the communication process. Citizens United, McCutcheon, all these decisions of the courts, which whatever minimal barriers are now down, that you hear the Koch brothers planning to spend $1 billion in the next election, then you find out they spend hundreds of millions to do just these things, to take apart.
And some of the things that have been done are really sophisticated. There's an interesting study by Suzanne Mettler, Cornell University, a sociologist, called The Submerged State. And what she shows pretty convincingly is that there's been a change from visible government programs of reform and subsidy and support, where you see that the government is doing something for you, to indirect means where you don't see that the government is doing it. What you see is some private entity doing it, which is being subsidized by the government. Mm-hmm. And the end result is that people think the government is harming them. It's not helping them. And of course, as this submerged state develops, turns out most of the subsidies are going to the wealthy. So for example, the um, the home mortgage interest deduction, which is a very substantial sum of money. Overwhelmingly, it goes to the wealthy. In the education, the for-profit educational system, which is a big thing here, most of the funding comes from the taxpayer, but you don't see it, and of course it's going to the corporations, not the, and there's devices like that all across the country. But the result is that some strange results. People who are most subsidized by the government tend to be most opposed to government subsidy. So it's very striking.
Do they not know they are subsidized, or are they just cynical?
You don't know.
They do not know.
I mean, who would know that a tax deduction for employer health insurance is a huge subsidy to the corporations, or that the home mortgage deduction is a subsidy to the wealthy? I mean, you can figure it out if you think about it, but it's not obvious on the surface. And that goes case by case.
So in this terrific new book from Haymarket Books, Noam Chomsky, Masters of Mankind, which Glenn Greenwald says, on the cover, Glenn Greenwald says, there is no living political writer who has more radically changed how more people think in more parts of the world about political issues than Noam Chomsky, which is kind of nice. But I'm not trying to,
You have to realize that he's a friend. And
he is a friend, I realize it.
I say nice things about him.
You say it back and forth, it's wonderful. We are at a book festival, so some people are aware of blurbs on books, but yeah, I have the sense that Glenn probably means it. And I also, this is a collection of essays. And one of the interesting things is, for a variety of reasons, my favorite one, and it was an essay that you wrote some years ago titled Consent Without Consent. And I think that comes, a lot of what we're talking about with the submerged state, but also this notion that an awfully lot of what's happening when you assault labor, when you assault, so many of the vehicles by which people might organize, might push back, it's really an assault on democracy itself.
Democracy is a threat to any power system. It doesn't matter what it is. I mean, for pretty obvious reasons. So yes, there is the general assault on the population includes a major assault on democracy. And what's happened in the United States is extremely revealing. One of the main topics in mainstream academic political science is study of comparison between public attitudes and public policy, which is a pretty straightforward inquiry. We see public policy, there's extensive polls, they're pretty reliable, they're consistent over time, so you get a pretty good sense of public attitudes. And the results are quite intriguing. By now, about 70% of the population is literally disenfranchised. They're the lower 70% on the income wealth scale. Their political representatives simply pay no attention to them. So it doesn't matter what they think. As you move up the scale, you get a little bit more influence when you get to the very top policies made. That correlates very, one of the major students of political participation, Walter Dean Burnham, years ago, pointed out that if you look at the non-voting in the United States is very high. He said, if you look at the non-voters and their kind of demographics and compare it with Europe, they are the people who in Europe would vote for some Labourite or Social Democratic Party. But since no such thing exists here, they don't vote. Maybe they may not read academic political science, but they know that nobody's paying attention to them. So why bother voting? This is a plutocracy, it's not a democracy. And the effects are pretty striking. There was the last election, November 2014, was carefully analyzed by two really fine political scientists, Walter Dean Burnham and Tom Ferguson, wrote a careful analysis of it. Voting participation. Turns out that voting participation was about at the level of 1830.
Well, it was 36%.
But if you compare it state by state,
But what was interesting was it was the lowest since
Since
1942.
it's worse than that.
Yeah.
Take a look at their analysis, state by state. It's about 1830. That was a time when voting was restricted to propertied white males. And this has been declining, and it's by now, most people, as they point out, just don't bother.
Yeah.
It's,
Well, in fact, when we flood so much money into politics,
Solo, a Star Wars story, Monday at 9 on Showcase.
You look very remorseful, mate. Now what? These two little high-brain brother-in-law's family was fighting. There's no reason to believe that they meant her or you any harm. It appears you killed him in cold blood.
That how it appears to you.
I can't say how it went, Mike. I wasn't there.
You were there when Layla first came over. You know a thing or two about her family.
They disowned her.
Disowned her because she got pregnant by my son Liam. That's not family. Those two guys were doing Shadow Shakurchi's bidding. Don't expect me to cry for them.
Shadow Shakurchi's Layla's family?
Her mother, Hard as Nails matriarch of one of the most prominent tribes in Iraq.
It's unorthodox for a woman to be in that position of prominence.
Didn't exactly run for the office. Shadow buried her father, her brothers, and her husband in the war with Iran. Lost her oldest son to Saddam a couple more since.
Yeah, that was about how it meant.
But not memory. She's a vindictive old sow. And when the empty Shadow cuts you off, you're not supposed to get a happily ever after on the beach in Mexico. She's willing to pay to drag them back home. She's not gonna flinch at a couple of dead guns fire.
What'd you use?
What?
What'd you use?
45.
How many shots?
I used the boat as a decoy. Left the radio on the deck with an open pier. They went for it with guns drawn. Emptied my bag from the porch, put 2 in the big guy and 3 in the other. Reloaded, dragged them on board, and gave them each 3 more for good measure. It was self-defense.
Take a statement. The evidence better confirm every bit of it.
Abby! Abby, what are you doing? Abby! Abby! What are you doing?
He told me to do it. I had to do it, but I'm trying to do it like an archaeologist. I'm keeping very careful notes of where everything came from, and I'm sure I can put it back together now when I'm done.
You're using a chainsaw.
Well, it's not like there was a zipper, Mickey. I mean, I was hoping for a zipper or some sort of system of dowels and slots.
Well, please tell me it was worth it.
I found a secret stash box. Grease residue suggests that Frank kept a gun in there.
The guy keeps a gun everywhere. Took us 15 minutes to get through security.
Frank was smuggling a piece? Was it a 22?
No, it was a saw blade curled in the hollowed-out heel of his boot. 22. I don't think he carries anything that small.
I found this mangled piece of lead embedded deep in the floorboards. I think it's 2 slugs smashed together like boom boom.
One bullet hit another bullet?
Yeah,
It's an impossible shot.
yeah. If they were both in the air at the same time.
It's a bullet in a bullet? Abby's analyzing it now, but if it is a piece of a 22 and a 45, then...
You broke up there. What are you saying? I can't hear you, Miggy. I'm in the basement.
Why? Because I don't want to talk about the case in front of Layla and the kid.
Listen, Tony, this is really important. I need you to check the seams of the walls.
The walls.
Well, do they appear to be removable?
Huh.
Or permanent, maybe. It could be hidden underneath something on the floor, something that looks like it doesn't belong.
Actually, I think Colonel Hogan has got a radio in the coffee pot, but the tunnel might have been filled in.
I saw a video on the internet once of this guy, he built a Lamborghini in his basement. They had to pull off half the house to get it out.
Is that a ding? Think we've got another shooter.
Do you know that? Yes, she does. I left Iraq because I didn't want to expose her to the violence I saw as a child. I wanted the peace to last in her eyes forever. You made difficult choices. For both of you. Sometimes the most significant moments happen in your life without any choice at all. Like your father. I knew the cost of even talking to Liam, but I couldn't help it. The feeling was irresistible. It was love at first sight. Maybe. Do you miss your homeland? It was difficult to leave it all behind. But the right reasons made it easier.
So you just trying to pick up and start over again. Rebuild. Again.
Yes.
What's your place like in Mexico?
It is simple. Just enough room for the three of us.
Were you inside when it started?
Yes.
What'd you do?
I did what any mother would do. I ran to my daughter.
Where was she? Layla. Where was Amira? Shada Shakirchi has become one of the most outspoken voices of the Iraqi tribes during the past few years, and she suffered 4 bouts of enemies among the old guard. I can tell you all this, you're right. Bombing last year, those 40, including her oldest son, was a target, increased security considerably since then. After she came in contact with First Defense Base and Colonel Bell. Get this. Ducky for you. Yeah, Doug. All right.
Ah, Jethro. You know we have enormous respect for you and for the loyalty that you exhibit toward your friends.
Yes. We love you very, very much.
What the hell is this?
This is an intervention.
Your own history with Mike Franks is having a blinding effect on your skill as an investigator.
It's too much for any man to take. I mean, he busted the gut. The guy's a gut buster. He's like a 6-foot hero, like the sandwich. He's not 6 foot. I mean, he's not a hero.
He's lying to us.
It's insulting enough when people that we don't know try this stuff.
With a colleague, I mean, a supposed friend, it's simply a betrayal.
45 slug, 45 slug, 45 slug, etc., etc., etc.
The pathways they took through the bodies, all of them straight downwards. Incredibly destructive.
We also found this partial 22 slug, and there's more.
We believe that what happened was this.
Somebody else shot him with a rifle, a 22 long. And then Frank shot through the gunshot wounds of the already dead men to destroy the evidence. Mike Franks did not kill these guys.
Oops. Stop it. I know you're only doing this to annoy me, you know?
I'm chasing criminals.
Bulletproof. New series Wednesday, September 30th. Only on Showcase.
1, 2, 3.
Intelligence. New series Sunday, September 13th on Showcase.
children are here.
We save by using time.
Which means we use less.
3 generations of clothes cleaned up and wash.
Come on.
Anybody see my pants? Don't pay for water, pay for clean. It's gotta be time. Some things were made for each other. Like Tostitos chips and salsa. Quick lunch is great, but love, I'm looking for long term. That's why I trust the Army. When it comes to connecting with someone real, compatibility matters. That's why every 14 minutes someone finds love on eHarmony. Start free today. Must be 18 or older.
We're back at the break, and we have a low prices on mattresses guaranteed. Get mattresses starting at just $12.99. Canada's biggest mattress brand. So, go back to the concept our low price, only $5.99. From Brand, Canada's mattress store.
I like Maybelline. Anybody feeling trendy, girl with straight jeans, showing off those curves to super queen. Everyone knows like in your old lady jeans. Welcome to Air Nation. It's from only at Old Navy and Old Navy.ca. My hygienist points to the round head. So does my Oral B. My hygienist personalizes my food. So does my Oral B. My hygienist uses just the right pressure. So does my Oral B.
Oral B combines a dentist-inspired brushing with the gentle energy of micro vibrations for a wow sensation and a professional clean feel.
My mouth says wow. And so does my Oral B.
Making more ethical choices here can help support farming communities all the way over here. Bring home the rich, smooth taste of McCafe 100% ethically sourced coffee today.
I founded the largest tech company in the world. We were developing machine intelligence, the kind that thinks like an actual person. It was supposed to stay shuttered.
I'm your friend, right?
AI moves through the world. If we can't get to you physically, we can get to you emotionally. We need to find this thing and kill it.
Careful. I've been writing on this thing all day. Just about done.
Listen here, we got a case, you and I. A sergeant and his best friend. To this little boy duck hunting for the first time.
Geese. They were chasing wild geese.
I know. Frank, you made that joke a few times.
You left each time.
Well, I had to work for you.
Not anymore.
That sergeant dragged his friend home that day, missing out his chest. Dead. Birdshot everywhere. Shotgun blast, close range. Nothing accidental about it, you wouldn't charge. It was accidental. The boy's gun went off. Shot that guy right through the heart. I've been thinking about that a lot lately.
That sergeant standing over the body of his best friend. Still here with some just killed him.
Like it's his fault. Like he failed home. Only one thing left for him to do, and that's to protect his son from what's coming.
Put his shotgun into the wound and fires.
He's thinking he'll take the bullet himself.
This ain't gonna work. When you figure it.
Boss, you wanted me to let you know if I found anything interesting about Shana Shakirchi. According to this flight information, she is on a commercial plane right now. Grandma's on her way to DC.
courtesy.
Welcome to Washington. Car's right out front.
What is she doing here? She's taking a hands-on approach with her daughter. Her first attempt lacked in finesse. How's the statement coming, Mike? That is a load of crap. Probably called me on it. You lied to us. I'm sure you're shocked and appalled, Director.
I'm relieved. Of all your unsavory character traits, I find that one the most palatable. At least there aren't any more bodies.
There might be, if you turn her loose.
What are we gonna hold her on, Mike? She hasn't committed a crime.
Conspiracy to be a bitch. It's the one thing he told the truth about. He is protecting his family.
Well, I guess that's what this is. It's a family thing. Why don't you get in there and see if you can work it out with the in-laws? You do still know your way around the room, don't you?
You know who I am.
The Greeks will call you Karin. Your boat conducts the dead to hell, leaving a trail of misery in the wake.
Yeah, lady. And you're all smiles and sunshine.
I've been tracking your every move since the day your accursed offspring ruined my daughter.
I have never hit a woman.
I find that hard to believe.
I'm finding it hard to believe you're actually a woman. You
Manipulative
son of a...
You hide my family from me.
You disowned them.
So things change. I have lost too much family that I can never get back. She is my child, and the little girl is my granddaughter. My blood.
You sent gunmen to abduct Layla and Amira. What were your intentions? To punish them?
To rescue from you. If there is a chance to reconcile, I am willing to travel the distance.
You put them in.
It would never have turned violent, I was assured of it. If not for you.
I got news for you, lady. I didn't pull a gun on them. I didn't fire the first shot.
Shut up. I don't believe you.
I'm not proud to come to this. I wasn't ready for them. I didn't get tipped off. Hell, I never even heard them coming.
Your defenses were down?
I was playing with my granddaughter. We were up in the boat. She wanted to paint her name on the side. Then these two guys are standing there, pointing guns up at me. Layla noticed them from the house.
My Layla? My meek, quiet little girl?
Unloaded 6 shots, rapid fire from a .22 hunting rifle. 5 hits.
She knows to shoot.
I told her, never underestimate a mother bear when her cub's in danger.
That I believe.
They're safer with me than they are with you. I can't let you pull them back into the fold. What? What is it?
I made payment already. Colonel Bell assures me that the contract will be completed.
up the ladder if the first guy's failed. Directly to Bell. Guy's got nothing to lose anyway.
He takes the hit if he takes the job. Can't get it done. With that chip on his shoulder, not even she can call him off.
Dragons.
In trouble, Brian?
Where's the mirror? She's upstairs, sleeping. All right. Take her downstairs.
Oh, not a shit.
Yes, she does.
Thank you.
Damon?
They say, you know this guy? Uncle Dane Worth. USMC. Dishonorably discharged.
Oh, yeah.
Give me your hand, Al. What are you doing?
This is Gibbs's living room.
What are you doing here? Rescuing kidnapped little girl. Her mother.
I'm sorry to tell you, but you're actually abducting me.
Hey, Worth. Cut the chit chat just to kill the prisoner. I can't believe the mistake. Bell's got a lot of money right on this job. We're gonna finish with him without I think you should hear them now, don't you? You get the girls, Corporal? You finish the job? Yeah, I'm finished with the job, sir.
What have you done, son?
I quit.
And that's a shame because he's a pretty loyal guy, too.
I got a mess out of my house. Somebody's got to clean that up.
You want to go punch for punch with me, Gibbs?
Keep in mind, I got a big arsenal behind me.
I wouldn't worry, your suit covers it up very nicely. Sorry, I'm a little wacky because of the flashbang your boys threw at us.
Perhaps my men were over-exuberant in pursuit of their tasks. Personally, however, I have not broken any laws.
U.S. laws. But the federales want to talk to.
Yeah, it turns out bounty hunting is illegal south of the border.
God bless Mexico.
Tell my men, you take a swing. Make sure you connect hard enough to put the other guy down.
Good advice. Chance, mind your back. Also time to get a haircut.
You think the grandparents can rip this out?
My dad told me a story once. Now it dates back maybe 30 years after the Civil War. My great-great-grandfather and grandfather had fathers that fought on either side. These two old warriors, they probably shot at each other on the battlefield. They couldn't even look at each other at their own kids' wedding. But they did come to live with each other in the same house. And they spent every day for the rest of their lives on the front porch. And a couple of wicker rocking chairs rocking back and forth.
Well, here's hoping. We got better things to do than be Frank's family counselor. I guess they worked out their differences. Your relatives, they developed with time, right?
Way I heard it, those two never said a word.
This is New London. Everyone's happy here. This is your home now.
All you have to do is connect. Everyone needs to.
But this place is so perfect. Why is it upside down? There was a disruption.
We need to stop this before this goes too far.
Brave New World. The new series. Sunday, September 13th. On Showcase.
Hello, Dave. What can I do for you? Weather report, stock prices, shopping list. Lights on, lights off. What
This can happen. I don't. Well, Red Bull gives you wings. When you have no heart indigestion, upset stomach, diarrhea. Girl, this Pepto will make your stomach right. Indigestion, upset stomach, diarrhea. Try Pepto-Bismol.
I got new jeans and some new fleece, new school year, whatever that means. From the sporty chic to the STEM star, go show off your fit, let's raise the bar. Whatever this year looks like, you can get fresh looks at Old Navy and OldNavy.ca.
Everyone's gonna love plant-based KFC, except Bobby, who said, "How dare you?
Don't do this.
Relax, Bobby. It's just plant-based."
Do one wrong thing leads to another wrong thing. Next thing you know, he's stuck in a bunch of logs looking for himself.
What big ears you have. What big eyes you have. Oh, look at those chompers.
This is not a fairy tale.
New series Wednesday, September 30th, only on Showcase.
This program is available in described video for the visually impaired.
My horse, my win. Remind me what you gave before you ran again. Take it on his ass. You up already? Hang on a second. What's this doing here? I don't know. Yeah, come on, man, let's go. Not yet. Here. Maybe.
What are you doing?
Nothing.
Those are none of your business. Those belong to me.
They're funny.
They're private.
They're self-help CDs. Clone Parks ordered them. Download your destiny. 3 easy payments of $19.95 each. Satisfaction guaranteed or your money back.
Maybe when he's already satisfied.
Maybe there's an Easter bunny too.
Anyone can achieve their fullest potential. Who we are might be predetermined, but the path we follow is always of our own.
Oh my God, from the hall.
I love this guy, sort of a poor man
We should
should
never allow our fears or the expectations of others to set the frontiers of our destiny.
We've heard enough. Maybe you're the one who needs a little self-help.
Well, see, that's where you're wrong. I'm already enlightened. I know exactly who I am. It may not be pretty, but I am the nose out. Give me a roar.
Like an elephant.
Grab your gear. Got a dead civilian doctor on Naval Academy grounds. Gunshot.
Get out of this desk. Getting out of this desk, boss.
Where's Mickey?
We do not know.
Maybe little Timmy missed the short bus. Find it.
Find them. The lady's my car.
Here you go, sir. You sure this is mine? It seems like a long time for my order. Is this one good? Thanks.
Can I help you with that?
Me? No, I'm okay.
Be careful.
John, where yourself.
I'm a trained professional.
I can tell. I think I've seen you here before. I'm Amanda.
Sorry. I'm Tim. Do you live around here? Or?
I go to grad school. I come here to work sometimes.
I've got a brain in my front left pocket. Could you help me out?
The phone?
Yes, phone.
We just.
Sorry. Yeah, Tony, what is it? You got a call. Yeah, I know, I'm coming. With the coffees? Yes, with the coffees. Yes, I got your pastry.
Well, let's take it slow. Even now?
Uh-huh.
Get it, move on.
I have to run.
I heard.
Would you maybe want to get some coffee together?
Yeah. Sure. Here is my number. Call me.
Speed up.
Sooner the better.
Let's see you.
License and registration indicate the victim's a guy named Dr. Ilan Soro. Family. Divorced, no kids. Owns a practice here in DC and also in Paris. I'm here, boss. So nice of you to make it, Jim. No excuses, won't happen again. Danish in the car. Scone. Chocolate. Blueberry. I can tell you're with somebody, you know. I think I don't see that little glint in your eye. Spring in your step. Spill, Troublicious. What's your name? Spill. I'm gonna get to work now.
Gibbs, check your prints with the mobile APHIS. So far, nothing other than cirrhosis and the surgical instruments used for white print. But I did find some strands of surgical threads on the carpet.
I've worked on some of it.
So why here and not in the hospital?
Because the patient didn't want to be seen, that's why. Director, I saw the PD report. Details I've come across before. I wanted to see for myself. Copycat. That would be a relief.
With the director coming to a crime scene.
He's heard this one.
Yeah, Jethro, based on the significant blood loss. Director, this is a surprise.
What do you got, Doctor?
Well, I can't confirm it till I get him back to autopsy, but it seems to me that the killer intentionally shot his victim in such a way that he slowly bled out.
You mean they wanted it to be painful?
The torturers didn't like it. The victim fell back into the brush, and later on was turned over so a second bullet could be delivered into the base of the skull.
Severing the brainstem.
Both shots fired with uncanny precision. You've seen this before.
It's her signature. She always delivers a second shot to finish the job.
Who is she?
Lee Wan Kai, a North Korean operative. She was just in Los Angeles.
I read the report.
Kai was wounded and disappeared. I'm convinced she's here now.
And why Soro?
Kai was pretty badly hurt. She must have gotten some medical attention, traveled to DC. Probably carjacked the doctor. Forced him to treat her, and then she killed him. Honest realizer. You question him? You chase somebody for 20 years, you start to think like him. In some ways, I know Kai better than I know myself.
Coincidence, huh?
Maybe. You think finding this body in my jurisdiction is coincidence?
Director.
Find Kai. Why? She'll use deadly force. So should you.
This context just in London, John.
Everyone belongs to everyone else.
Don't you get tired of that?
I feel that way. You just need to embrace this place.
Breathe.
new series, September 13th on Showcase.
Did you know that every single flush flings odors onto your soft surfaces? Then they get released back into the air, so you smell them later. Ew, right? That's why Febreze created Small Spaces. Press firmly and watch it get to work. Unlike the leading comb, Small Spaces continuously eliminates odors in the air and on surfaces, so they don't come back for 45 days. Just imagine what it can do with other odors.
They say at a certain age you just won't care anymore. I wonder what age that is. Simply Ageless from Hyaluronic Complex. Plants and hydrates for your best skin at any age. From easy, breezy, beautiful CoverGirl.
Oh, sorry, I'm late.
Let's try this again. Rated T for teen.
Super Evan just about sleeps in her cave, but when we realized she was battling sensitive skin, we switched to New Tide Plus Daily Free. This gentle on her skin. And cleans our whole body detergent. New Tide Pods Plus Downy Free. Safe for sensitive skin with eczema and psoriasis.
Hydrosense eye drops are preservative-free and made with a naturally sourced lubricant. So when you have dry eyes, give them long-lasting relief. Hydrosense eye drops in an easy squeeze bottle.
Tonight's dinner, it's gonna be great. This last second bake sale, it's gonna be great. And these meatballs for your future in-laws, it's gonna be, oh boy. It's okay, you got this. And now everyone is chowing and tacoing and talking with their mouths full. Even Nana. Yes, Nana likes it. With Clubhouse quality by your side for 130 years, it's gonna be great.
From rogue finger painters to baby veils to sweat sessions. Even life inside can bring on things like sweat and oil. But it's nothing a deep clean can't fix. Love, Neutrogena.
For every frosty sleeper, toasty snoozer, tosser, turner, or mix of everything in between, we have your match. Mix and Match is back for a limited time only at Sleep Country. Sleep well, stay well. Sleep Country. Struggling to clean tough messes with wipes? Try Mr. Clean Magic Eraser Sheets. Just wet, squeeze, and erase icky messes in microwaves and on stovetops. For an amazing clean, get the power of Mr. Clean Magic Eraser in disposable sheets.
Armed robbery. Gunfights in the street.
Bulletproof. New series Wednesday, September 30th. Only on Showcase.
You know how proud I am of where you work. We'll reach a point where they have more. Who's having to cut them in?
Devils. New series Wednesday, September 16th. Only on W.
Lee Wan Kai, North Korean assassin, one-time fanatical nationalist, credited with 27 targeted hits in 7 countries, dozens more by association.
She likes quiet walks on the beach, laughing with friends, and playing frisbee with her Cocker Spaniel, Rufus.
Does not say that.
So it might as well. Look at those come-hither eyes. Those perfect kiss me now lips. No wonder Vance is obsessed. Kai's killing me. I'm just looking at her. You and Kai are probably a lot more alike than you think.
They do not follow.
Really. A couple of pretty ladies, both trained assassins.
You annoy me sometimes.
Sometimes.
Most of the time.
Well, something big must have happened between Kai and Vance. Seriously, director shows up at a crime scene, that's not kosher. Figure of speech. Oh, opening the numbers of the new girl, huh? Did you? I'm having a Kreskin-like intuition here. Is she a redhead? She is. Look at you, pulling a page from Gibbs' playbook. Nice.
Do not pay attention to McGee. Whoever she is, I am sure she is lovely.
Actually, nice to you. Not to me.
Maybe because you broke into my desk and sold motivational CDs.
I put them back.
You mocked me publicly.
I always do that.
Maybe they're working.
Oh, maybe you should stop drinking the motivational Kool-Aid.
Bring the victim's name to the DC Attorney's Office. It's a lawsuit pending against Elon Stroh.
Threats made, one B&E charged us on multiple police reports filed.
So we tick somebody off. He's a doctor, but they lack in social skills they make up for handing out free pharmaceuticals.
A local nurse by the name of Linda DeMarco accused him of sexual assault.
The report quotes her as saying she wanted to kill him.
I mean, it's not Lee Wan Kai after all.
I'm gonna add more agents to the investigation.
Okay. Your decision.
He didn't give me much time. I've had almost 2 decades. How much more time do you need? You want it to be her. I get that. I want it to be over. And based on those 2 gunshot wounds,
2 gunshot wounds doesn't mean she's here.
the hell it doesn't.
Keep talking, man. Just keep talking. I don't want to go.
17 years ago, UN peacekeeping force marches into Yugoslavia. Entire city of Belgrade went purple. They pulled from every branch. So one night we're walking near the opera house. Somebody takes a shot at a local politico. I can't even remember his name. The shooter was this young girl, Kai. So my partner, Neil Wilson, and we were first one on scene. I landed a shot in her chest. I killed her. But she gets up like nothing ever happened. Puts one in my shoulder and she put 2 in Neil. And while I'm lying there, looking at him, I can feel a piece up against my neck. So now I'm waiting. You know, I'm praying. But it never happened. Every day I think about his wife and I think about his baby. And here I am. You're so solid. Solid doesn't exist. That's why the Serbs called it Rupera. The Phantom.
Yeah, I get you. Check it out.
The lead.
Oh, okay. We get anything, you're the first to know.
Is that Amanda? Copy vixen?
Maybe.
Tech sex, huh? When you ask her what a question mark wedged between 2 dollar signs means, it sounds kind of kinky to me.
She wants to see me tonight when I'm probably working.
Oh, don't tell her that. Tell her you've arranged a waterbed, some squirt guns, and a little bit of candle wax. Listen to Madonna, too. Women like Madonna.
Mr. Marco? NCIS. Need to speak with you.
Ms. DeMarco, open up. We want to talk to you.
Federal agents! Drop it! Is that piece of film Thoreau sent you? Because I've got a message for him. You can tell him.
Did you say federal agents?
Yes, federal agents!
Well, Dad, put the weapon down.
Okay.
Hands in the air.
Okay.
Who do you think you are? Sarah Palin? Mr. Marco's alibi checks out. She was working a double shift at Washington General. Maybe she slipped down for a few minutes, just long enough to kill him.
It's not her. Well, she shot at us with a very big gun. That happens.
What happens?
People, they react.
Irrationally.
Sometimes. Call Metro. Find out. They were toys.
That's it.
Yeah. She'll do it.
You heard himself, Elvis. Call Metro.
If you call.
Okay, then you uncover. Oh, you're afraid of nurse, huh? You are too. I'll call Metro. You uncuff Florence Nightingale. Because it's your destiny.
Apart from 3 clogged arteries and a liver that's processed too much Bordeaux, our dearly departed physician was in relatively good health. Probably would have lived another 2 decades if he hadn't been gunned down in his golden years.
So what's so puzzling?
Something I found on my body, not in it. A single human capillus. Hair. Yes. You guys covered it. Yeah, not like this one. You do yourself. It's really yes, a rather ingenious one made of DNA, which the killer wanted us to find. I took the liberty of removing the follicular tail and sent it up to Miss Shuto for analysis. Abby?
Hey guys, cool.
Yeah, you like hair?
I ran the sample. When you pull a hair from your scalp, there's traces of blood at the root. That blood, in this case, was high in white blood cells because your white count goes up when you're fighting a serious injury or infection.
Well, it confirms they needed a doctor. Got an ID?
I took the liberty of running the DNA strand through CODIS and the Interpol DNA database. Got it on both. Just like the director predicted.
It's Kai.
Hey, dinner's almost ready.
I'm not hungry.
But don't let me get worried about you now.
Plenty of other things to worry about. Where'd you send your kids?
Over to Alana's, they do every night with popcorn.
No, we have been moving.
Because you're never home.
Yeah, well, there is that, isn't there?
You know, when you called and said you were coming home early, I thought something was up. What's going on?
I'm just thinking about things.
What kind of things? How long this time, honey?
Off and on since I got back from Los
Please
Angeles.
don't do this again. Please don't do
It's
this
not
again.
that
Come
easy.
on, please do it.
It's not that easy.
You have a family.
So did he.
Don't take a dinner off.
No.
Hello, Leon. Happy to hear from me. First California, now here. Washington's beautiful.
How'd you get this number?
For the books some credit. I've been doing this for a while. You should know that better than anyone.
Every law enforcement officer in the National Capital Region is looking for you, Kai.
I'm flattered. I only have eyes for you, Director.
McGee, got Kai on the director's home line right now. Trace it. He knows it's going to be over there.
It's rush hour, boss.
She chose rush hour just for this reason.
Come on, McGee.
I trace my call, these landlines are slow.
Keep talking, Peon. Just keep talking.
I know you're hurt. I guarantee you, I'll take care of you. You'll be taken care of if you turn yourself in.
Turn myself in. You know I can't do that.
We've been through this before, Kai. In Munich, in Prague, in Tokyo.
And to think, you almost got me in Los Angeles.
Give up.
I can't. I have something I have to do.
You might not get another chance. Got it? Boss, what do we got? She's right in front of the director's couch. Kai, you listen to me. You know this won't end well.
And when it does, will you miss me?
Hello? Can I help you?
Get back!
Yeah, what? Are you all right? Who was that?
Let's go inside.
Frustrated that clothes come out of the dryer wrinkled? Next time, try Bounce Wrinkle Guard Dryer Sheets. The world's first mega sheet with 3 times more wrinkle relaxant. Look at the difference of these two shirts. The Wrinkle Guard shirt has less wrinkles and static and more softness and freshness. To tame wrinkles on the go, use Bounce 3-in-1 Rapid Touch-Up Spray. Bounce out wrinkles with Bounce Wrinkle Guard Dryer Sheets and Touch-Up Spray, both with a money-back guarantee.
Younger looking skin can start today.
Absolutely ageless moisturizer from Aveeno with blackberry complex and antioxidants reveals younger looking skin in just 1 week.
Aveeno, naturally beautiful results.
There's a simple phrase that can make a big difference. How are you?
It's so nice to check in.
If you have questions about your money, big or small, book a check-in with an RBC advisor today.
Oh, baby, come on and say it now. Just let the words go out.
No calories, no sweetness, all smiles. Bubbly sparkling water. Crack a smile.
Oh, sorry I'm late.
Let's try this again. Rated T for teen.
No matter how you sleep, get protected with Always Overnight Pads. With a back that's 2 times larger, up to 10 hours of protection. So be a flamingo or a gecko with up to 100% weed-free nuts. Always.
What's up? Today we're talking snacks. And not my dad's kind. Fan fave, bear paws. Mom likes that they only use real stuff in them. I like that I don't have to guess.
Came to and saw a beautiful being, like beautiful calming light.
Yes, I'm here. That being touched my head, I felt every emotion. Spears. It's amazing. I cried, sir. And you was right.
Wow. What floor were you guys on? I woke up in a dirty metal dome and 40 little gray aliens watched me pee in a steel bowl. They took the bowl, walked out.
Interesting. Would these beings also bathe in light?
No, there were gray with big fat eyes and little mouths. They just stared while I peed. I don't think that was dealing with the top gray.
And how did they extract your hearing? Was that telepathically?
No. I woke up, I had to pee like a camel. So I started peeing and one of the gray aliens slapped the wall. I pointed at the bowl. So I got the hint, I kind of walked over the bowl.
Yes, I see. Now, when you all were you clothed?
I was wrapped in like a bug made out of warm, glowing energy.
Yeah, like a blanket made out of pure love.
Yeah, a little different for me. I had my shirt I came in with, but my pants were gone. So my coop was out. It's full porky pig in it and a drafty dog.
Now, did you all stay on the same ship the entire time?
Well, my body did, but my consciousness was shown with lines beyond time and space. It was so beautiful. Sorry, I'm just crying about this thing about it a little bit.
Do you need a tissue?
What? No, sorry, you're not sure.
The alien showed my mind the furnace of all creation, what we would call God. What? These fancy cats are seeing God. Meanwhile, I'm starting phase 2, which is me sitting on a stool, while 40 gray aliens take turns gently batting my knockers. Did y'all get the knocker stuff? No knocker stuff, sorry. And did you feel threatened to this property? No. They were real respectful about it. They were in a line, and then one by one they'd step up, slap a knocker, and then the Sorry, Sharon. Not like that. No harm, no foul. Perhaps they were collecting biological data. No. No, that sounds super off the books. I swear to God, there was one gray alien by a door just kind of. I think he was the lookout. Look, it wasn't my worst Wednesday night. How did the aliens return you all to Earth? I was carried down gently. I was crying. I was carried down gently in a cradle of light, placed into a soft bed of wallflowers.
Yeah, the light laid me down like a baby in a meadow near my house. I was smiling and weeping, tears of joy, sir.
All right, well, now this must be a little bit. My grand exit was out of what was basically like a big airplane toilet. Shoot, I dropped down 7 feet off the roof of the Long John Silver's. They threw out my pants separately and missed the roof. My slacks landed in a freaking pine tree 30 feet away. So I had to just chill up there with my damn cuckoo broom shoe until the place opened up.
You got screwed.
What do you think, Todd? Well, we'd like to take you guys for physical examinations. All right, you're gonna be in the knocker stuff? Possibly, I'm sorry. No, don't be just be general, because you're pretty banged up. Tell me about God. What's God's will?
Charmin Ultra Soft is twice as absorbent, so you can use less. Charmin Ultra Soft is twice as absorbent, so you can use less. Is that why she's here? For minutes.
No. Well, I made some calls to talk to CIA. Evidently, reliable isn't what she used to be. Government seems relations with her. Yeah.
The U.S. government as we were the first and only people to have experienced 2 verified alien abductions.
This is nice. Like, 1 minute we're drinking beer in Nicole's parking lots, and now we're cosmic curiosities.
kill Sorrel. Normally she uses a larger caliber. This one was planned for specific damage, so Ducky was right.
So that means the ballistics report is not done.
No, it's not done.
Okay, guess I'll come back later.
Hey, McGee.
Yeah.
You look, happy.
You do?
Yeah. It's becoming, actually. You're, like, confident. Is there anything you want to tell me?
No.
Are you sure? Nothing's new? Nothing at all?
Hey, buddy. I started seeing some.
I know. I'm Sorrel. I was waiting to say.
That's fast.
Tell me about it.
Oh, no.
No, you know what? Don't. You don't have to. I think it's excellent.
Exactly.
Hey, you know,
How's it going?
From the LA office, he's been like crazy. I think.
That's great.
I haven't met him yet. You've met him. I've only been to